Dreaming of owning your own home, but not sure if you can afford it? What if I told you that making just $50,000 a year doesn't mean you have to give up on your home ownership dreams? In fact, with the right strategies and a few clever hacks, you can buy a house and still sleep soundly at night, knowing you're not buried under debt. Stick around because in the next 10 to 15 minutes, I'll reveal how much house you can actually afford, plus some tips and tricks to stretch your dollar even further. All right, let's dive in. Owning a home is the quintessential American dream, but with home prices skyrocketing and interest rates fluctuating, it's easy to get lost in the numbers. And today, we're going to cut through the noise and focus on how much home you can realistically afford if you're making $50,000 a year. We'll walk through the 30% rule, the 28-36 rule, and sprinkle in some money-saving hacks and tips on finding more affordable homes. While these next 6 tips will be incredibly helpful with how much house you can actually afford, hang in there until the end for a special bonus tip you may not have considered. First, let's establish the baseline. With an annual salary of $50,000, many would assume that buying a home is out of reach. But with smart budgeting, clever hacks, and a clear understanding of your finances, it's totally possible. Well, tip number 1, the good old 30% rule. The idea here is simple. Don't spend more than 30% of your gross income on housing costs, which includes mortgage payments, property taxes, and insurance. And on a $50,000 salary, that translates to about $1,250 per month. Here's a little hack to consider. Consider house hacking. Buy a duplex or a home with a basement apartment and rent out the extra space. And this way, your tenants help cover the mortgage, freeing up more of your income for other expenses. Now, this is something kind of in a similar realm. I was purchasing homes and then renting them out in my early real estate experiences. And actually, as our oldest son started going to college, this was a wonderful way to actually set him up for free living, essentially, within that home. Now, of course, he didn't buy it. He was living in the room, but again, rent-free. And then he had roommates come in and rent out the other 3 rooms, essentially. But even if you're purchasing a home, this is a similar avenue that you could take. Rent out some rooms, find people that you can trust, etc., and then make it to where you essentially aren't paying anything for those living expenses and they are buying down the mortgage for you. Another way to stretch that 30% is by looking for homes that need a little TLC. A fixer-upper can often be purchased at a lower price, and with some DIY or do-it-yourself skills or sweat equity, you can add value without breaking the bank. Again, this is something that I did a lot of. I had some handyman experience, so I'd go in and do a lot of the repairs myself. Not everybody has that luxury, but hey, you can learn. A lot of these videos online, YouTube, like you're watching here, has some incredible tutorials on how to do some of these things and actually put sweat equity into it and save yourself a ton of money. If you thought tip 1 was helpful with how much house you can actually afford, wait until you see what the next rule is about. Next up is the 28-36 rule, a favorite among the lenders. This rule suggests that no more than 28% of your gross monthly income should go towards housing expenses, and no more than 36% should go towards all debts combined. Housing, car loans, credit card payments, student loans, you name it. Now again, here's a little hack for reducing your monthly debt load. Look into consolidating your debts to lower interest rates or refinancing existing loans. This can free up some room in your budget, making it easier to stay within the 28-36 rule limits. And if you are still finding it tight, consider buying with a partner or family member. Pooling resources can significantly increase your buying power and make it easier to stick to these financial guidelines. Now, this is somewhere, again, you need to be careful. I always like to talk about covering your assets, right? If you do something like this, you're partnering with somebody, keep in mind, right? Relationships go sour sometimes, so make sure that you are protected, that you have your I's dotted, your T's crossed, all the legal mumbo jumbo. It's important, okay? Let's protect our assets. So if you thought tip number 2 was informative with how much house you can actually afford, wait until you see what tip 3 explains. But first, if you're new to the channel and you love learning about money topics, let's smash that subscribe button. And tip number 3 is the 30-33 rule, which might be new to some of you. And here's how it works. You should aim to put 30% down on a home. Ensure that your mortgage is no more than 30% of your income, and only consider homes that are no more than 3 times your annual salary. So for a $50,000 salary, this means looking at homes priced around $150,000, which may seem low depending on your area, but it's a conservative approach that will keep your finances healthy. Now, if coming up with that 30% down payment seems daunting, here's a hack. Use down payment assistance programs or first-time homebuyer grants that can lower your upfront cost. And remember, consider homes in up-and-coming neighborhoods where prices might be lower, but appreciation potential is absolutely higher. And you can snag a deal now and then watch your investment grow over time. If you thought tip 3 was something to consider with how much house you can actually afford, check out this next way to save on a mortgage payment. Now, let's talk about PMI, private mortgage insurance. If you can't afford to put down 20% on your home, most lenders will require you to pay PMI, which can add $30 to $70 or more per month to your mortgage payment on a $150,000 home. Here's a little hack to avoid PMI. Some lenders offer lender-paid PMI where they cover the insurance cost in exchange for a slightly higher interest rate. And it's worth running the numbers to see if this option could actually save you money in the long run. But again, very important. Look at the numbers. If you're not good with numbers, send me a comment. I'll help you. Reach out to your friend, reach out to your CPA or your aspiring accountant friend and have them crunch some numbers and do some research, okay? Can make a big difference. Or you can focus on saving aggressively to reach that 20% threshold faster, using high yield savings accounts or investment returns to boost your down payment savings. Now, if a 20% down payment is out of the question, I guarantee you this next tip should be worth considering. While trying to find out how much house you can actually afford, actually buying a home might just seem out of reach right now, but don't despair. Tip number 5 is all about making the most of your time while you save. Instead of rushing into home ownership, consider investing your money to grow your down payment. You can explore options like high yield savings accounts, index funds, or even low risk bonds. Here's a little hack again for you. Automate your savings. Set up automatic transfers to a separate savings account each and every month. This way, you're consistently building your down payment really without even thinking about it. And don't forget about employer-sponsored retirement accounts like a 401k, for example. Some employers offer hardship withdrawals or loans that you can use for a down payment, though it's essential to weigh the pros and cons before tapping into your retirement funds. This is something that I actually had done on a couple occasions when purchasing a couple of my rental properties. I could see the writing on the wall just based on how the 401 I had was performing and the fees and all that stuff. And I've talked about that in some other videos, but I could see that it would well pay off if I dumped some of that money into rental real estate essentially for the cash flow. Again, especially if the houses were purchased properly and I could cash flow them. And then of course the long-term equity build and 5 to 7% in some cases in the area that I live in on that appreciation for the home. And of course, at the same time that those mortgage payments were being paid down by tenants. But again, that's a different subject for a different day. We're talking about buying your own home, but you can look at it with some of the same perspectives, and you may want to jump out of that home in the future and turn that first purchase into something that you can step up into another home and so on, and basically rinse and repeat. Now, if you're just bound and determined to make home ownership happen one way or another, then don't miss tip number 6. Finally, let's talk about one of the biggest game changers in your home buying journey. Now, at first, this may not sound too appealing. Stick with me. Now, it's about relocating to up-and-coming towns. If you're living in a high-cost city, you might find it nearly impossible to buy a home on a $50,000 salary. But what if you move to a more affordable area? Places that are on the rise but haven't hit their peaks yet. Here's a little hack. Research towns that are undergoing revitalization or have new job opportunities coming in. These areas often offer lower home prices and the potential for significant property value appreciation as they grow. You could get in early and watch your investment flourish. Of course, there are pros and cons to this approach. On the plus side, you'll likely get more house for your money, a lower cost of living, and a quieter lifestyle. Perfect for saving more and planning for retirement. But on the downside, you might be sacrificing the excitement, amenities, and job opportunities of a bigger city. It's a trade-off, but if financial security and a solid retirement plan are your goals, it's definitely worth considering. Remember, buying a home isn't just about where you want to live right now. It's about setting yourself up for a stable financial future. Moving to a more affordable town could be the best decision you make. And now for a final bonus tip when determining how much house you can actually afford. Maybe it's just best if you don't buy a home. Renting isn't the enemy. In fact, renting and investing the difference can be a smart strategy. If you can find a rental that's cheaper than buying, take the extra money you'd be spending on a mortgage and invest it. Not to mention the repairs that you're going to have. So you're not just going to have the mortgage, the insurance, the taxes, but you're going to have repairs. And trust me, I've got plenty of homes. It is not fun when those ACs break or heaters or whatever it may be, the maintenance. It gets expensive. Sometimes it's smarter maybe just to rent and invest that extra income. Even if you were to rent a home and that price was the same as a mortgage payment, or maybe it was a little bit more, you're not going to have those expenses that I guarantee it are going to come along with home ownership. So it's not a bad thing. And over time, the returns from your investments could outpace the equity that you would build from owning a home or that appreciation. So again, a lot of things to consider, and it's not always a bad thing, especially with today's environment and what's going on in the world. Renting is not a bad thing, so don't let that deter you. Here's a little hack for renters. Look for properties where utilities are included or negotiate for lower rent in exchange for doing minor repairs or maintenance. Every dollar saved can be invested, bringing you closer to your home ownership goals if that's ultimately what you want to do. Now, with this subject in mind, with me as a landlord, I will flip this and show you an example. I have several tenants that basically do something very, very similar. They offered, or I actually offered, and I wouldn't say this is always the smartest thing to do as a landlord. Some will say, hey, you want to make sure that every year that you're increasing the rents by 5, sometimes 10%. But to me, it was more valuable, and I know the tenants love it, is we worked out a deal to where they essentially will fix all of the minor types of problems that happen. Not including ACs or $5,000, $10,000 ACs, but some of the minor maintenance items. Plumbing goes, a faucet breaks. I had somebody fix actually a leak in the wall, and then they went in and did a little plumbing. Those kind of things, we negotiated that, and I said, hey, I'm not going to raise your rent for as long as you want to rent this home for me. I'm going to leave it where it's at. No increases every year like typical landlords would do, but I just expect you to fix the piddly stuff and not be bugging and calling me all the time. And it's worked out great. Same thing that from the other end when you're renting a home is if you have some handyman experience or handywoman experience, make sure you make some of those offers, or even if you don't, be willing maybe to pay every once in a while somebody to come out and do a little service so that you can keep your rental payment down low and it will pay off, I guarantee it. This approach is particularly useful in high cost areas where home prices are steep and gives you the flexibility to move without the burden of selling a home. So there you have it, 6 essential tips plus a bonus and savings hacks for buying a home on a $50,000 salary. Whether it's using the 30% rule, avoiding PMI, relocating to a more affordable town, or even renting and investing, there are plenty of ways to make home ownership a reality without stretching yourself too thin. I hope you found this video helpful, and if you have any questions, drop them in the comments below. I'd love to hear from you, and I'll see you in the next video.